Hello everybody, and welcome to our Summer 2020 webinar series. My name is Chad Ivan. I am the Sales and Applications Manager for Crash and Safety here at DTS. Today's event is the single chain solution, or single cable solution. Why in-dummy DAS is the future, where we will focus on how these systems can make your facility more efficient, not only saving you time, but money in repairs, calibrations, and overall capital investments. Before I get started, I would like to cover the format and a few logistics. For the webinar will be a combination of pre-recorded video and slide presentation with audio and video from the presenter only. We encourage you to submit questions through the presentation by typing, throughout the presentation, by typing them in the Q&A window. You should see a button at the bottom of the screen. We have a panel of experts that will monitor and answer the questions throughout the webinar. We will also scan the questions at the conclusion and answer as many as we can, time permitting. If there are specific topics that you would like to cover directly in a private meeting, please reach out and coordinate with our sales team. We are interested in learning about how we can meet your objectives. Your presenter today is Tamer Abubakr, our ATD Systems Manager. The panelists for today's event are Nate Brown, our Senior Applications Engineer, and Kyrie Henderson, one of our Systems Applications Engineer. With that, I would like to personally thank you for taking the time to attend our event. Tamer, take it away.
All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. So before we get started, just wanted to thank you for joining us. And everybody loves crash test dummies, but nobody likes dealing with the wires. So today I hope to share with you some of the experience we've learned at DTS over the years working with our in-dummy data acquisition solutions and why we think it's the future of automotive ATDs. So on our agenda, we're going to start with a few issues that come about with umbilical ATDs, and then why in-dummy DAS can improve your efficiencies and help your lab run smoother. And then we'll go through our DTS in-dummy solutions, and then we should have some time for some questions at the end. So one of the major issues that come about with umbilical ATDs is handling. When you have a huge umbilical, the wires tend to get heavy, they get in the way, and they make it really difficult to move and position the ATD. You can see in the center here, this is a blast test in a military vehicle, and believe it or not, those giant military vehicles are actually pretty tight on the inside, and they make it really difficult to maneuver and position the ATD in place. So when you have a giant pile of wires that go with it, it makes it even more difficult. Same goes for the THOR and automotive ATDs. It just makes it really difficult all around moving, positioning, and placing in the dummy. And the wires end up becoming a failure point because they're dragging on the ground, they might get pinched or stepped on, and it can really cause some issues in your tests. The next issue is servicing. If you have a channel fail, it's a pretty big process to unravel your entire umbilical, remove all your tape, pull out your one sensor, and then replace it. With an in-dummy solution, it becomes much easier to replace sensors. You end up spending a lot of time on cable management, and a lot of customers end up running redundant channels because they're worried about damaging analog wires in a test. And when it comes to your test protocol, we've all seen this mess of wires here that you end up dealing with. The wires can end up affecting ATD positioning or kinematics. You'll add hours to your test time. There's risk of data loss because if you cut a wire here, your data just stops. There's no chance of it continuing to record that sensor. And with long cable runs, you can start to run into analog signal issues. So if I haven't driven the point home enough, don't get weighed down by wires. It really can create a lot of trouble. As much as we try to cable manage, it always ends up being difficult. This is the WIAMAN. You know, it's a 139 channel dummy, very similar to like a THOR, and it's a lot of wires to be dealing with. This is another test from one of our customers. You know, as much as you try, it's really difficult to deal with out of dummy systems. So why in dummy DAS? So there's a lot of benefits in dummy DAS. You greatly reduce your setup time. One of our big customers, Aberdeen Proving Ground, when they first started using WIAMAN, they noticed a big difference here. They have their test setup really, you know, down to the minute, and they know exactly when to bring out the ATDs. They're going to spend 2 hours routing the wires and plugging everything in. And I'll never forget the first time we brought out the new WIAMAN with just a single exit cable, and it really helped them. You know, we brought out the dummies, and they kind of brought them in, they put them in the vehicle, they plugged in their one wire, and everyone just kind of stood around and that's it, you know, we're ready to go. And, you know, obviously now they've improved their efficiency so they don't waste so much time, but it was a big eye-opener for everybody on just how much time was spent on that. Obviously, ATD kinematics are improved when it's not weighed down by wires. You're reducing your risk to data loss, and you're improving your sensor serviceability. If you do end up having an issue, a lot of our customers find that it's a lot easier to just unplug the dummy, pull it out, and put a spare ATD in place. And that makes it really easy in the case of you know, a failing sensor or something like that near the test time. And then the increased efficiency, you know, really pays dividends in being able to run more than one test in a day. A lot of labs that have moved to in-dummy DAS have found they can start to run 2, 3, maybe even 4 tests a day because they're not spending so much time setting these tests up. And then a lot of times you have to modify the vehicle to account for the umbilical cables, and that's not always an option. And a lot of times it can be a hassle if you're running a test with, you know, a full suite of ATDs in every seat. It makes it really difficult to manage all those wires. So in-dummy DAS really helps with that. So one more point here, just encouraging you to cut the weight. This is 10.2 kilograms of wires and connectors that we cut off a 139 channel THOR. And you can see it's really a significant weight savings and when you go to in-dummy DAS. So now we're going to go over the DTS in-dummy solutions. DTS has been in business for 30 years, and 23 of those years we've been working on in-dummy DAS. If you are familiar with DTS, you know that we started with the TDAS G5 in the world SID, and we have Slice Nano for a few dummies and head forms, and we've been an industry leader in crash-worthy data acquisition systems for this entire time. And Slice6, our latest data acquisition system, is the pinnacle of our experience and our customer feedback. We take our customer feedback very seriously, and we've, you know, collated all that into our designs and methods to make the best product here. So we're going to go into an intro of Slice6. We have a video that I'll share with you, and it's about 6 minutes long. It's down in our ATD lab, so we will get that started right now.
Hello, I'm Tamer Abubakr. I'm the ATD Systems Manager here at DTS, and today we have WIAMAN. WIAMAN is the underbody blast dummy that we developed for the U.S. Army, and it was our test bed for developing the Slice6 data acquisition system. We use Slice6 in all of our automotive ATDs now, so today we'll go over some of the features of Slice6, how it works, and how you can use it in your system. Let's take a look underneath the flesh of the WIAMAN and look at the Slice6 data acquisition system. So Slice6 is a distributed data acquisition system, which means we have multiple units all throughout the body, and they're not just in one spot in the center of the body. This is a big benefit for a couple reasons. It allows us to bring the data acquisition closer to the analog sensors, virtually eliminating all analog wires except for a few small ones. Another benefit is heat distribution. Rather than have all the heat generation in a central location, the distribution of DAS throughout the ATD drastically lowers the overall impact of heating to the dummy. You have your Slice6 distributor in the center, which is then connected with cable harnesses to each chain of the ATD. So on WeaMan, we have a chain that goes up to the head, we have a chain that goes down to the pelvis, and then one chain down each leg. And that's very similar to other automotive ATDs like the THOR, the World SID, or the Hybrid 3. This is the Slice6 distributor. It's the main distribution unit for each individual ATD. On the top you have your battery connector that goes to your backup battery power. The up connector goes to your exit cable, and then you have 4 down connectors that go to each chain of the ATD. The auxiliary connector allows you to plug in the temperature sensors and the external LED indicator. This is our single ATD exit cable. It's slightly larger than an Ethernet cable, and it carries your power, Ethernet, and control signals like event and status. It makes it really easy to set up or break down a test with only a single connector to plug in for each ATD. Another nice feature about Slice6 is backup battery power. With the Army, we had a really long battery requirement of 2 hours of runtime, so you have these really big batteries on the side here. But with a typical automotive ATD, we get away with a really slimline battery that gives us up to half an hour of runtime, and that protects your data. So if for any reason you lose power to the system, or your cable gets cut, your data acquisition is still recording to flash memory, and all your data is safe and recoverable after the test. The auxiliary port allows us to plug in a few different items. The first item is the external LED indicator. Now this replicates the LEDs that are on the Slice6 distributor so that you can easily see them outside the dummy and have access to them during the test. The next thing that you can plug in is a temperature sensor. So you can plug in up to 4 temperature sensors throughout the ATD. Typical locations are going to be the torso, like this one, on the rib, in the pelvis, and these allow you to monitor the temperature, take a temperature recording just before the test, and also data log the temperature all the way up until the test. A lot of test requirements these days require at least 4 to 5 hours of logging of the temperature before the test, and this allows you to do that. Every individual Slice6 can be set up as its own tilt sensor. These settings are user configurable based on the test with target tilt or how it's mounted in the ATD for different offsets. And so our software allows you to configure the Slice6 for a specific location and then get a live view of the tilt measurements so you can use it to position the ATD. So you no longer need a separate tilt system installed in your ATD. Here we have an example of a direct mount to the sensor Slice6 configuration. So on the bottom here we have our 60xG2, which is 3 linear accelerometers and 3 angular rate sensors. And that directly attaches to the Slice6. So when you take this apart, you can see all the analog signals travel directly through this connector here. So there's no wires at all. And after the analog signals pass and get recorded into the Slice6, the Slice6 has 16 gigabytes of flash memory, and that stores directly to this Slice6 unit. So if anywhere along the chain you have a cable cut or power loss, all your data is safe inside the Slice6 that's easily recoverable after the test. Here we have an example of a direct mount load cell. So just like the 60xG2, the Slice6 directly attaches to the load cell, and there's no analog wires at all. These load cells are made by all the major load cell manufacturers, and they're compatible with Slice6. Not every ATD sensor application allows us to directly mount the Slice6 to our sensors, so we have this sensor interface option, which is basically an interface device that allows you to plug in wired analog sensors. So here we have an example of a 3-channel load cell plugged into a Slice6. And then we have 3 dummy plugs to fill up the gap. So these work really easily. We have one small screw that you loosen here, and then this lock bar comes up, and that's what keeps the sensor from falling out. So your dummy plugs will come out, and then you can just pull your sensor out, and now you can remove your sensor, replace it, get it calibrated. After you get your sensor plugged back in, you get your dummy plugs back in, and then you can flip your lock bar over the top and tighten it back down. And now you're secure and ready to test. So much like the direct mount option, the sensor interface is easily removable from the Slice6 for calibration and replacement. We have Slice6 designs for almost every ATD out there, whether it's the Hybrid 3/5, 50th, 95th, THOR, World SID, Euro SID, the list goes on. But any ATD you need integrated, we can do it here at DTS.
So that was our intro to Slice6. Slice6 is our latest data acquisition system, and it has a lot of really nice benefits over our old data acquisition systems. It's a really clean distributed design. So instead of having your data acquisition concentrated in one spot in the dummy, it's distributed and closer to the sensor. That gives us the ability to make really flexible configurations no matter what the ATD that you're trying to integrate is. And it virtually eliminates all sensor wires. There are some spots where you have to plug in a sensor, you have to use a wired sensor, you can't directly mount, and typically this is for single axis accelerometers or maybe load cells that aren't 6-axis. But with our sensor interface, it's really easy to do that. You can see on the right here, this is the Weeman pelvis, and there's over 30 channels here, and they're all plugged into Slice6, and it's a really nice, clean, tucked-in design that really packages the sensors in a nice way that makes it easy to service. Being that Slice6 is a new product for us, it's cutting edge technology. It boots really fast, it connects really fast, and it downloads really fast. If you're familiar with DTS, you know that before we run a test with our software, we run through sensor diagnostics to see what sensors are working and what sensors might have issues. Slice6 will go through an entire ATD of diagnostics in about 10 seconds, which is a huge improvement over our old ones. Slice6 uses non-volatile flash memory, so your data is always safe as it's being recorded. Our Slice6 system integrates with all our DTS legacy hardware, so if you're running with a mini distributor or any of our other older hardware, you can still use Slice6. And of course, we're SE J211 compliant with Slice6. And we've really thought through the designs to make logical breakpoints so it's easy to remove a leg, remove the pelvis, the head, and test with it when you need it. So here's kind of the general idea of what a Slice6 system looks like. Starting from the outside, you may run a mini distributor in your vehicle, and you'll have your one exit cable that goes to your ATD. In the center, you'll have your Slice6 distributor, which connects to your ID pendant, and then your temperature sensors, your battery, and then you'll have each chain. This is an example of a THOR with 134 channels, and you can see each chain can have up to 10 Slice6s. So, and then we have our breakpoints here, so they all kind of make sense. You can easily unplug here, remove your head, unplug here, remove your lower leg, your femur, your pelvis, and it makes serviceability really nice and easy. So like I said, our Slice6 distributor is the main central point, and you can run up to 4 chains of 10 Slice6, so up to 240 channels. You can have temperature monitoring and logging and backup battery power anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours based on your situation. We also have a single chain adapter. Not every ATD is large enough to accommodate the Slice6 distributor, and it really just doesn't have enough channels to make sense for it. So we developed a single chain adapter where we've been able to chain all the Slice6s in an ATD into a single chain. And so this blue box right here is actually a supercapacitor that gives you about 2 seconds of backup battery power in the case of your cable being cut. And this also plugs directly into the mini distributor, and you can use it with all of our legacy DTS systems. So some more detail on Slice6. It's a really small data acquisition system we developed for the Army. It can sample up to 400 samples per second, 16-bit ATD. It is a fixed anti-aliasing filter, so you have to decide what filter you want to go with when you order. But we have lots of options to accommodate whatever you need. It's also capable of IEEE 1588 PTP synchronization, although that's not used in automotive testing, so typically you may not need that. Every Slice6 is its own Ethernet device with 2 ports. And we have 16 gigabytes of flash memory on board, 9 to 15 volt power input and 500 G shock survivability. So you can see inside the Slice6, you have your analog board, which connects to your sensor, and then that's connected to the digital board where you get in your power, your control bus, and your Ethernet, and then we have a separate memory board for storage. So through this Nano port on the side is where you plug into the system. So that's where you get your Ethernet, your power, and your control signals, like the event, status, and start record. So you can run Slice6 individually by itself, you can daisy chain them together, or you can run a distributed system with the Slice6 distributor or the single chain adapter throughout the dummy. The sensor input can be plugged in 3 different ways. So you can either plug in directly to a load cell, directly to a 60xG2, or a sensor interface. We went through these in the video. So I won't spend too much time on that, but the direct mount to the load cell option is an option. All the major load cell manufacturers support this option. So if you would like to do it on a 6-channel load cell, you can do it. The other option is a 60xG2, which is another great option. Sometimes in the head, or in certain areas, you may run, 3 accelerometers or 1 or 2 angular rate sensors, and sometimes it just makes sense to move up to the 60xG2 and run all 6 channels just to clean up the system a little bit. And then the sensor interface option allows you to plug in then any 1, 2, or 3 channel sensor directly to the Slice6. So I did mention the tilt function. This is a screenshot of our tilt software. So you can set up any Slice6 as a tilt sensor. So it's a 3-axis tilt sensor. So you can, no matter which way it's mounted, you can always set it up to the correct orientation and offsets. So you can see here, this is the pelvis 60X that we use in the THOR. And there's a mount offset of 16.7 degrees. So we can subtract that offset so that you're level and then use that Slice6 instead of a tilt sensor. So you can program any one you want. This is how you set it up in our software. And then you can see the bubble is also programmable for which direction you want Y and X. It'll turn green once you get within the range that you specify that you want it to be in. And then we also have temperature monitoring and logging. So you can run up to 4 temperature sensors. Our software allows you to log it. So you can monitor it. You can check your table in the software, and then you can also export it to a CSV later if you need to have the raw data. A couple other accessories to look at. We have a Slice6 cable adapter, which plugs onto the top of a load cell or a 60xG2, and it goes to LEMOs or Tajimi connectors, and it's just a way to be able to calibrate or service your load cell or 60x, or use it outside the ATD if you wanted to use it with a different system. And then we have sensor adapters that allow you to plug in directly to those external sensors, and then those also go to LEMO or Tajimi connectors, and that's just another way to use your sensor directly if you need to use it outside of the dummy. So I'd like to get into our Slice6 designs. A lot of our customers who started moving to Slice6 really noticed the benefits to this and started asking for other ATDs, even the older ATDs. So we've really pushed to make a design for every ATD out there, and if we don't have it complete, we're working on it, and it will be complete soon. So if there's something you're interested in, definitely let us know. We'll let you know what the status is, or we can prioritize something that you may be interested in. And we do share designs with the major dummy manufacturers, so all the designs should be the same whether you're ordering from us or ordering from somebody else. This is an example of the THOR system. So you can see that the cable harness runs through the system with all the sensors and the sensor wires. And we try really carefully to make sure we're not upsetting the mass and CG of the ATDs. So we will, make holes and modifications in the ATD, or we'll adjust the ballast weights so that we're maintaining the integrity of the design, the original design of the ATD. So I'm going to run through a couple of the designs that we have. The THOR was the first design that we went through after WeAman. So we have a lot of experience with that one. That mature design is very mature. But now we're starting to move on to the other ATDs. So I'm just going to run through a couple of them just to give you an idea of what's in process and what's on the way. We are design complete on World SID, and our first customer is going to take delivery of one in September. So you can see with World SID, we tried really hard to maintain kind of the original use case of the World SID, where all of the sensor wires are coming up to the center here. So all the Slice6 is attached to this back plane, and it makes it really easy to plug them all in. We also delivered 2 hybrid 3/5 to IIHS just recently. This is another really nice clean design. You can see here, I believe these are around 50 or 60 channel with some femur channels. So this design is also complete and ready to go. The hybrid 350th is also design complete, and we'll be building a few of these here shortly. And then we're also working on the QDummies. This is just an example of the Q10. You can see, if you know the QDummies, you know they're really small and tight and they don't have a lot of room. But with Slice6 being so small and distributed, we were able to kind of fit these in where we need to fit them and plug in all the channels. So we do have some other data acquisition options. If you're familiar with DTS, you know we do Slice Nano and G5. We're really pushing everybody to move towards Slice6 because there's a lot of efficiencies in running the same data acquisition system in all your ATDs. You know, you can have the same spare DAS, you can have the same spare sensors. We try really hard to make sure that all our sensor wire lengths are cut to similar lengths so that you only have to stock a few different lengths of sensors so that you can easily swap them out if you need to. But our Slice Nano system does work really well for, you know, the free motion head form, the pedestrian head form, the leg forms, and they've been really popular with that. A lot of the leg forms and head forms have been sold with Slice Nano, and it makes it really easy to run these tests with them. So DTS does offer integration services. When you send us your ATD, it doesn't matter if it's a 30-year-old ATD or a brand new ATD. We can take it in and we can convert it to Slice6 for you. So typically we'll bring it in, we'll do an inspection and inventory. We can recommend to replace any worn parts that may need replacing, or if there's any damaged parts. Then we'll take the sensors, we'll cut them to length, we'll rewire them. We'll recalibrate any sensors that need to be recalibrated. We have the ability to recalibrate accelerometers in-house, and we send out the load cells to a lab that is well known in the industry for doing this. And then we build and integrate the ATD. And after it's built, we do a full system test. We build your sensor database, and we do all the polarity checks. So when you receive the ATD, you can put it right in a vehicle and run your test that same day. And we can do this both in our California headquarters or in our Michigan office. It kind of depends on our workload and what makes the most sense for the customer, where the integration is done, but we can do it in either place. And with these kits, we've made it so that the customer can also do the kit upgrade themselves. It does require some increased capabilities. There are a few, depending on the ATD, a few modifications you may need to do to the spine boxes or other mounts. Sometimes we just replace a metal piece if there's too many modifications, but other more expensive ones we just have modified. So you'll need access to a machine shop that can make these modifications, but we have all the drawings and instructions on how to modify the parts that you need to. We found a lot of customers like to have us integrate their first ATD, and then they'll just buy the kits from us after that and do the rest on their own after they kind of have a baseline understanding of how the system works and how it is built up. But besides the machine shop access, you'll also need, somebody who's really good at wiring sensors. And then, of course, you'll want to send certain sensors out for recalibration if necessary. With that, if you did want to do it yourself, or if you don't, we do have really nice integration manuals for each design. These include exploded diagrams, and these are all available on our support site. So you have exploded diagrams and all the part numbers where everything plugs in and your configuration diagrams. So you can see that was the 5th, this is the 50th. It makes it really easy if you need to replace a part or figure out what screw goes where or how the DAS is mounted. It's just a nice document of how your system is set up, and it makes it really easy to do the integration yourself if you wanted to. So with that, we also do on-site training. Excuse me. Obviously, this is COVID-19 depending right now, but you know, this is one of our customers in Italy. He's really enjoys working on ATDs, and this is their THOR here. We integrated this THOR with Slice6 for them. We shipped it out, and then I met them out there, and we immediately tore it down all the way down to the bones. And it's a really great way for customers to learn. There's nothing like hands-on experience. You know, you can page through a manual, but really taking it apart and having the confidence that, you know, a trained person like myself is there to help guide you along the way really helps, you know, give you confidence in your technician's confidence. So that lab was actually very impressed with the Slice6 system. You know, they'll be moving all of their ATDs over to Slice6 just because they really enjoyed the efficiencies they got from in-dummy DAS. Another example here, this is in China. I spent about a month in China last September. This is William. He's our tech support engineer based in China. And so we did the same thing. We stripped a THOR all the way down to the bones. And this is William just kind of translating for me to the lab technicians there. So typically, depending on what your system is, we'll plan for 1 to 4 days of training. And it's a really great way to get jump started and get confident in your new system. So just to review a few key takeaways, in-dummy DAS is really the future. There's a lot of nice benefits that come with it. And the gained efficiencies pay dividends and reduce risk. You're really losing the risk of losing your data, and you can gain a lot of efficiencies in your capital investment by being able to run multiple tests a day and, you know, not wasting so much time on sensor routing and wiring that you may spend maybe spending right now. And obviously DTS can handle with all of your DAS needs. If you need anything, any ATDs integrated or other systems, just let us know and we can help you out. So how to contact us if you have any technical questions or you want a sales quote or discuss what system might work for you, you can always come to me. I'm open to any technical questions. Chad is our good source for in the US automotive sales. So come to him with any questions. And then Reiner is our international sales manager. So you can go to him with any questions or systems you wanted quoted. But of course, if you're comfortable, if you already have somebody at DTS you're comfortable talking to, feel free to go to them and, you know, they'll make sure your message gets to the right person. So just another reminder about our help center. You can log on there. You can download any of these manuals right now if you wanted to, just to kind of check them out, see what our designs look like and what you might be getting into. And you can always submit a ticket or a help request directly from our website or from our support site. So with that, we'll take any questions. So I'm just going to pull up the question window here and see if we have any any questions I can answer. So we had one question about whether we've attached anything to live subjects and recorded data, and we have done that in the past. It's a good question. It can be done with Slice Nano or Slice6. So a good question here about temperature sensitivity and controlling the temperature of the dummy heating. Obviously, this is always a question when you add the DAS inside the dummy. You may be introducing heat into the system. Like I mentioned in the video, the data acquisition being distributed really helps with that, but we also spend a lot of time working on our power settings. So when the system is idle, it has a really low power draw, really low heat generation, and it's really only when it's recording that it starts to heat up. So you can see that it's really just going to be in the last, 10 seconds to a minute that you're actually recording data that your system will start to heat up, and it's not been an issue with quick tests. What else do we have here? So somebody asked if the tilt sensors can be accessed during acquisition. The answer right now is no, it's separate. So you can set it up in a live view while you're positioning the ATD, but we don't have the capability to record that right now. If that is something that you wanted, I would say submit a ticket and let us know if you have a specific need for that, and we can see if it's something we may be able to support in the future. Somebody asked if the temperatures can be accessed during acquisition. Yes, so once you set it to record and log, it will log the temperature through your test time, and you set your sample rate for that. Most people set it around, 30 seconds to a minute taking a sample for temperature. So somebody asked about telemetry. We do not have telemetry with Slice6, but we do with Slice6 Air that has features built in for that. So if you need to do that, Slice6 Air may be your option. A lot of questions today, thanks for that. So somebody asked about redundant sensors. So yes, you can have redundant sensors if you need to. Most customers find they don't need to, as if you need to replace a sensor, you can replace it very easily before a test, and you'll know about that. But if you do like to run redundant sensors, we do have accommodation for that. A lot of our designs may have open channels, or we can add an additional Slice6 pretty easily if you need to have more channels for those redundant sensors. Somebody asked about use of in-dummy DAS acceptable for regulatory tests. The answer is yes. This question was specific to Europe, but in-dummy DAS is actually, might even become a requirement for certain higher count ATDs. So let's see, what else do we have here? So somebody asked if it's possible to recalibrate Slice6 while it's mounted in the ATD. The answer is yes, but it's not necessarily practical. You would need an on-site visit for that because you do need to access the analog ports of the Slice6 to calibrate it. So it may be possible, but may not be feasible. What we found a lot of customers like to do with calibration is space them out. So maybe they do one a month and kind of have a tiered approach. And that way they can break down an ATD, pull out all their DAS, ship it back to us. Our Michigan office turns these things really fast. 2 to 3 days, we can have all your DAS recalibrated and on the way back to you. And then you can build everything back up and move on to the next one. So somebody said no umbilical, awesome. It's very awesome. You do still have your exit cable, which you can run untethered if you'd like, if you have backup battery power, but it's best to run plugged into at least a distributor so you can have a shared trigger and all that. We don't recommend using level triggers on destructive tests. Somebody asked about removing, Slice6 for calibration. Yes, you can remove Slice6 for calibration. Somebody asked about BioRid 2 for the Slice6. We have not built it yet, but we do have a design for a 24-channel version that we're working on for a customer. So if you're interested in that, definitely let us know. We can prioritize it if you need it. So somebody asked, compared to DTI, what's the advantage of Slice6? And there's a lot of advantages over DTI. Flash memory is one of the main ones. Slice6 uses flash memory, which means if you have any kind of a power loss, you're not losing your data. You don't need the power to maintain your data. So if your cable gets cut or something, your data is safe and you can recover it after the test. There's also a lot more flexibility with Slice6 as far as ATDs and sensors because it's distributed throughout the ATDs, so we can fit it in a lot more ATDs than a DTI system. And then we have flexible sample rates, a lot more flexible sample rates, up to 400,000 samples per second. And I think that's it. Let me see if there's any other. So somebody asked about typical difference in temperature inside the dummy, analog dummy versus in-dummy DAS. I would recommend you send me an email after the fact. We've done some testing on this. I don't have it in front of me, but typically the heating takes a little bit of time before it really kicks in. So if you're careful about your test protocol and not arming the system too early, it's really not something to worry about. And then someone asked, can you mention some of the sensor manufacturers used in applications? So pretty much every sensor manufacturer that's commonly used, we've used. So MG Sensor makes the load cells, Humanetics makes the load cells. In DevCo, MSI, accelerometers, really anything that you've been using previously, we can use with Slice6. And I think that's all the questions. If there's no other questions to ask, I think that's it. I'm going to go back here to our, go back to our emails just in case you wanted to screenshot that and send us an email after the fact. Thanks for joining us today. We had a good turnout and a lot of good questions. Definitely email us with any follow-up questions you have. And if we didn't get to your question for some reason, we'll follow up with an email after the fact.